Hello, everybody, and happy Wednesday. It's September 20th, about 3 o'clock here on the East Coast, and this is another Teikametrics Roundtable. We are very excited about the topic today. We do a webinar about once every couple of weeks, and firstly, thanks everybody for joining. This topic has come up over and over again with conversations that we've got, certainly with our customers and just folks reaching out. So we're happy to be able to spend some time with you today discussing Amazon headline search. Equally as importantly is we've got a special guest with us from Agility. So I'm going to introduce Liz here just in a second. But this voice may be familiar to you. So my name is Andy Coughlin, and I'm the CRO here at Teikametrics, and play the role of really MC. And I think the important thing that we try to convey in these conversations is exactly that. We don't want to just talk at anybody. We want to listen. We want to learn. We want to have just a discussion. So please ask questions. Anything's on the table, so please don't hesitate to certainly fire questions through the webinar. So it's going to be an exciting one. Going to be a lot of good content from both sides. So we're excited to have everybody, and we're ready to go. So with that, around the table, I kind of start to my left. I've got Joe Doobie.
Hey, Andy, how are you today?
Oh, I'm great, thanks. Thanks, Joe, for joining us. And then to his left.
Hi, everyone. This is Gauri. I'm on the customer success team here at Teikametrics.
Awesome. And we do have a special guest who isn't here in Boston with us, but is calling in from Salt Lake City. Liz, maybe introduce yourself and tell us what's going on in your world right now.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Andy. My name's Liz Adamson. Like Andy said, I'm based here in Salt Lake. My background is in marketing and brand management, and I run a consulting firm called Agility that specializes in helping Amazon sellers selling their products on Amazon, both retailers and brand owners and manufacturers. I've been helping sellers do that for about 6+ years now.
Awesome. Well, listen, Liz, thank you again for joining us. I mean, like I said, you've been doing this a long time, and it's going to be just a really good conversation. So as I said before, folks, jump in. Anything's on the table. Looking forward to having good conversation. And Joe, I'll pass to you to start running the show.
Awesome. Thanks, Andy. So wanted to run through the agenda quickly with everyone, and then we'll dive right into the content. So first, we'll be covering what are headline search ads, just giving you a little background, what they are, where they came from, what they look like. Then I'll be passing it over to Gauri on the second part here for brand registry. And that is one of the key requirements to running headline search ads. So Gauri will be walking through what it takes to get that set up and why it's so important for your business. On the third piece, we'll be going through campaign creation and best practices. So we'll actually walk through step by step on how to get a campaign set up and what you should be thinking about, and what those best practices are, both from our experience and from the conversations we've had with Amazon. And then fourth, we'll talk about the ongoing optimization. So headline search has only been available in Seller Central for about a month now. So it's interesting to sort of gather feedback on what's working and what's not working for sellers across the board and share some of those tips for the optimizations and where you can really get the most out of this type of advertising with your business. So starting right off the top, what are headline search ads? So we'll be referencing them as HSA or headline search throughout the presentation. That all means the same thing. So where are they available? And Liz can jump in here too, but they've been available as an ad type in Amazon Marketing Services for years now. And Amazon Marketing Services is something that is available to Vendor Central customers, those who are selling directly to Amazon. So Liz, I don't know if you want to share a little piece here around how long you've been working with headline search and how that fits into your sort of overall strategy when you're working with a customer who is on AMS.
Right. Yeah. So I've worked with a lot of clients who do what's called a hybrid approach, where they've got a Seller Central account and they've also got a Vendor Central or Vendor Express account, which gives them access to AMS. So we've worked quite a bit with AMS ads with our customers. Amazon Marketing Services, it was built for vendors originally, and it currently has 3 ad types: sponsored product ads, which you're probably all familiar with in Seller Central. It has headline search ads, which we're discussing today, and it has a third ad type called product display ads. And so we've worked heavily with the product display ads and headline search ads in AMS. Headline search ads, our experience has been just great. for many cases, we've got a really low ACOS. There wasn't a whole lot of competition before for a lot of the niches we were working in. We're probably going to see that change as it moves into Seller Central, but headline search ads is has been one of our favorite features of AMS, and very excited that it's now in Seller Central and available to more sellers.
Yeah, absolutely. So a lot of sellers got a bit of a preview. Amazon had been rolling out as a beta product over the summer, and I think most sellers now have it since mid-August. So it's been about a month since it's been available broadly to those brand registered sellers on Seller Central. So what exactly does a headline search ad look like? And here you'll see both the desktop and the mobile version. These advertisements are going to be up above all of the products in the search field. So this is something where it's a premium location that the customer is going to see as soon as they search something in Amazon. And you can see they're a bit different than the traditional sponsored product ad because there's a lot more to them than just the product image itself. So what does it include? So here you have not only a list of images, but you also have a custom message, and you have 50 characters, and we're going to go through that in more detail later in the presentation. But this is the first time in Seller Central you have some editing abilities on the copy for your advertisements. So previously with sponsored products, you're simply selecting which products you'd like to advertise. You have no impact on the images or any sort of advertising copy. Here you're gaining a lot more control. So along with the custom image, you have a link that's going to drive customers to a landing page that has a select grouping of your products. You can add in a logo. It's going to have your brand name. And then you can see there's 3 featured products that you have control over. So this is an advertising piece that you've never seen before in Seller Central, and it gives you a lot more control. So how do they work? So the purpose of headline search ads is not only to drive sales, we see them being more at the top of the funnel. This is something where this is your first opportunity to really drive brand awareness and not have a just singular focus on driving sales in the immediate term. Liz, could you speak a little bit about how you're positioning this ad type with your sellers?
Right. So like you said, it is more towards the top of the funnel and an opportunity to get your branding in front of the customer. I mean, not only do you can put your brand logo right there on the ad, it also has a little message saying sponsored by your brand name, a great way to get more brand awareness for your customers. And within that, we segment that even further. It's really important with headline search ads to define your strategy. There's several different strategies you can take and a lot more flexibility than what we have with sponsored product ads because you've got this custom message. You can create a curated collection of products to show to customers who click through. So it's really important to decide, what is my strategy? Is it purely brand awareness? And am I just trying to push my name out there, show them I'm the next big thing for product X, whether it's running shoes, protein powder, jewelry, whatever it is. Or am I trying to hit a really particular target market? For example, if I'm selling running shoes, am I selling women's running shoes? Am I selling a very specific type of running shoe? And trying to decide, before you just start launching campaigns, deciding what exactly am I trying to do? What are my goals? And how am I going to measure those goals? And how am I going to find the right customers, to see my products? How am I going to attract the right customers to my products?
Awesome. So we wanted to kick off the first poll. Really appreciate the audience participation here. So this is a really straightforward question. We're just asking, have you launched HSA through Seller Central? So just kick that off. We see the answers coming in now. Thanks everyone for voting. So the responses here are yes, no, you're working on getting brand registered, or you're not quite sure what those are. Hopefully we answer that last response today. Just give it a few more seconds. And I will close the poll now and share those results. So you can see most people on the webinar today, 55% have not yet launched headline search ads. So I hope you can take notes today and can go after and launch one after the call and get going. On the next answer is 29% have launched a headline search ad. So hopefully we can give you some tips on how to optimize those. And those that are working on getting brand registered, we'll talk more about that in the next section.
Great. So as Joe mentioned earlier today, brand registry is a prerequisite for running headline search advertising. So we're going to go through some basics about what you need to get brand registered and what your next steps would be in relation to that. So let's start with the why. Why do you need brand registry? So outside of headline search advertising, it also gives you access to additional marketing channels such as enhanced brand content and lets you really project your customer voice and your brand voice on Amazon. You can also, protect your intellectual property, prevent other people from being on your listings. So there is that benefit, and then there's also the benefit of the marketing aspect. We have more page detail control. You can build trust with customers and really get your whole brand out there versus just your product.
And just a quick one, are you invited to come to be registered? Does that come from Amazon, or do you just follow the steps and you're able to get brand registered?
You're able to get brand registered without being invited, but you do have to have some prerequisites, which we'll be going over in just a few minutes here.
Good.
Yeah, and to Gary's point, there's really a lot of benefits here, and we do see substantial lift in conversion rate with those tools such as enhanced brand content. So that's not something we're covering today, but used in conjunction with headline search ads, when you're driving traffic to your page, you want to make sure you're optimized for conversion and are really capturing all the sales you can from those people who are landing on your page. And with enhanced brand content, you can continue to tell that brand story, and you get a little bit more freedom with more images and content that you can provide the person who's browsing your listing.
Yeah, I'll echo all of that. Brand registry is one of the first things we work with our clients to make sure they're set up and have that going. Just so many benefits from doing that.
Yeah, and getting started, there are few requirements you need to submit to Amazon. So the first thing you want to do is actually get your trademark registered. So that's probably going to be the longest part of this process as far as the timeline goes, is getting submitting your application for that, getting your registration. But once that's done, Liz, you worked with this most recently. You see about a 2-week turnaround on Amazon's end. Is that correct?
Most recently, yeah. It depending on what their backlog is, it may take longer. Initially, it was taking several weeks, but we have seen some recent ones come around in about 2 weeks. So.
Perfect. So this list of requirements, will take you through registration, your logo, making sure you have product and packaging with your brand name on it, and then, of course, countries where your brand name is protected as well. Some additional things to keep in mind is if you have already registered for the old brand registry, some of those might require re-registration, although there are instances where sellers have been grandfathered in and they don't have to do this. You also need to have your own URL. That's actually part of the application process. And it's also going to help you build your SEO, because the goal of this is to have Amazon be one of your channels of sale, but you need to build up your brand presence.
And just for clarity, you cannot utilize headline search advertising if you're not brand registered.
That's correct.
Right.
Yeah, and one thing to know here is if you were part of the previous brand registry program, you may not have been prompted to apply for this brand registry 2.0, but you should still get out ahead of it because you don't want that stripped away from you. And the key difference there is that trademark. So I would make sure you're all over that and make sure you get that registered, because that's definitely the longest piece in terms of time for getting this all squared away.
Are there any additional tools you'd like to share, Liz, from just your customers' experiences registering their brands with Amazon?
I think we've covered it all. The biggest change is that trademark registration. That's what's hanging up some brand owners who just haven't gotten around to doing that yet. And, in addition to brand registry, having a brand trademark is just important for your product and your brand. It's something good to have regardless. So.
Yep. Perfect.
Awesome. So now we're going to dive into the campaign creation side of things. So we've talked about what are headline search ads, what do they look like, what do they contain. talked about the requirement for brand registry. Now we'll get into the actual details of going through in Seller Central each of the steps to get one of these launched. So this is what the screen will look like. And you'll notice it's going to be right side by side with your sponsored product campaigns. So you can navigate to this page by going to Advertising, Campaign Manager, and then you'll see headline search ads with that little orange text of new next to it. And when you first try to launch a campaign, you'll see there's 4 steps here, and we're going to go through each one of those steps. So first is the list page. This is where you are selecting 3 of your parent SKUs from your catalog to be featured on a custom landing page. And this is different, again, from sponsored products, where your advertising is now going to be at that parent product level. So previously, with sponsored products, you're selecting individual products or SKUs as ads. Here, you're selecting your products at that parent level. So all of those variations will be underneath. And with those parent SKUs, you have to select at least 3, and you can choose which order those will appear in. And you can have 3 to as many as there are products in your catalog. One note here is that we are looking forward to hopefully some more flexibility here on the Amazon side when creating this sort of destination of where sellers end up buyers end up when they click on a headline search ad. With AMS, you have the ability to drive traffic to a storefront or a custom URL. Here, you're limited to that list of ASINs that you're selecting here in the Seller Central platform.
And I would just add a little bit to that, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. Our testing has shown that these list pages have a higher conversion rate than a branded page, mostly because that's what Amazon shoppers are used to. They're used to browsing on Amazon because it looks very much like a search results page. It's what the customer expects to see when they click through to something. So it's a good conversion rate, a good opportunity. And I would also add, when you're choosing those products, keep in mind your strategy. If you sell 20 different variations of a protein powder, you don't necessarily need to put all 20 different types in there. That might be too broad. You may only be wanting to push your flavored powders, or maybe you have a powder that is for women, or maybe there's a powder for some other type. Maybe it's a post-workout and a pre-workout powder. Segment your products. Be very smart about which products you're showing, because they're going to be related to the keywords you eventually put in, and have them tied to the keywords that you're using.
Great advice. On step 2 here, this is where you get into the creative. So this is where, as I mentioned earlier in the webinar, you have a lot more control than you had in previous advertising types in Seller Central. So here's where you're actually adding an image and selecting your headline. So on the headline, you're allowed 50 characters. And your goal here should be to get engagement, get people to click on it. But you want to steer clear of avoiding any sort of unsupported claims. And Amazon's going to sort of kick those out right away and give you guidance as you're typing this in to make sure you're following the guidelines. You can't use things like best or top selling. They have to be objectively true claims. And this, just to note, this is something where you can't just create a headline search ad and have it be live on Amazon. This is something that is reviewed one by one by Amazon to make sure it follows all of the guidelines.
How long does that take, Joe?
Yeah, typically that's when they first launched, there was quite a backup, and we saw some sellers were waiting up to a week. Now it's typically about 48 hours.
Okay.
And for the image, you also have more control here. So you can use your existing product photos, but you also have an opportunity to upload your own image or logo. And this is another opportunity to really create that brand presence on Amazon, where there aren't as many opportunities to do that, obviously, as you have on your own website. But you want to drive home with sellers that you're a unique brand and really capture that awareness. So here you have the opportunity to, instead of just picking a product image, you can actually upload your own logo.
Yeah, and I'll just kind of keep pounding on this, theme of strategies, on making sure you're picking and sticking to a strategy. When you're designing that banner ad and you're picking the copy that goes in there, again, you need to be thinking about your messaging. You know, to go back to my protein powder example, you could certainly do a very generic message, shop protein powder. That doesn't say a whole lot. You may want to, again, be more focused. Are you shopping pre-workout powder, and then you're just listing those products as ones to choose from? And being very targeted in your approach often gives you better returns and higher conversion rates than just a big, broad kind of shotgun approach.
Absolutely. So once we have established our list page, selected those ASINs that will end up on the landing page, we've created our headline, selected the logo or image we want to use, you're now prompted to start creating your list of keywords. So with sponsored products, there were two options when you were creating campaigns. You had automatic and manual. Here, there's no option for an automatic targeting in HSA. So you are going to have to pick specific keywords to be bidding on. The other note here is that there are no negative keywords that are supported by the headline search ads currently. So when you are using things like broad keywords, you want to be careful there and not set your bids too high, because there are opportunities for dozens and hundreds of different search terms to be matched to some of those broad keywords that may not be super relevant to your products. So you do have the ability to choose from phrase, broad, and exact, just like you do in sponsored products. And it really isn't about pure volume here. You know, I've worked with some sellers who try to fit in thousands of keywords, but it's more about the quality of those keywords, monitoring their performance, and making adjustments. When we're talking with Amazon, their recommendation is to keep that list short and relevant to your products you're selling, and generate a list somewhere in the 30 to 40 range.
Yeah, and I wholeheartedly agree with that. Sorry, Joe.
Yeah, no,
interrupt here just real quick. I totally agree with that, because that goes along with that targeted approach I've been talking about. And when I select these keywords, I'm selecting keywords that are in my headline ad. So going back to the same example again, if I am advertising post-workout protein powder, then my keywords will all revolve around that. Because it's very powerful to have a customer type in a search term. You know, if they're specifically searching for post-workout protein powder, post-workout supplements, post-workout whatever, drink mix. If they're typing in post-workout and then they see that same phrase in your banner ad, your click-through rate is going to go up because it will just resonate with them. Yes, that's what I'm looking for. Post-workout, there it is. Click, I'm on your page. So being very strategic about kind of matching up those keywords to the same message you have in your banner ad.
Yeah, that's a great point. And here you also have an additional tool from Amazon in that they're exposing to you the expected traffic on some of these keywords. So you'll see when you start to type in a keyword, whether it's high, medium, or low traffic. And Liz, are you focusing exclusively on the high and medium, or do you also mix in some low traffic? What's your strategy there when you're selecting keywords?
Yeah, we mix all of those in, because really my primary measuring stick is relevancy. Is this keyword relevant to the message I'm getting across? Is this relevant to my product I'm trying to sell? And those low volume keywords, they're often just more longer tail keywords, which often they might have a low traffic, but they have a higher conversion rate. And so you don't want to ignore those. You want to work both the short tail keywords and the long tail keywords with a mix of traffics and a mix of conversion rates to really get a fine-tuned approach there.
And how do you place bids on these match types, Liz, just to jump off of Joe's question there?
Yeah, you want to stagger those bids because as Joe mentioned, since there's no negative keywords supported in headline search ads, you don't have a lot of control over what search terms your broad keywords are being matched to. And so we keep those broad keyword bids low, and what that level is depends on your niche, depends on your product, depends on your ACOS goals, things like that. But we'll keep the broad bid at a lower level. The phrase will be just higher, and the exact match, because that's where we have the most control and the most visibility on what's going on there, that will have the highest bid. And so by staggering those, you'll control your costs, because they'll have different conversion rates, from exact being a higher conversion rate to broad being a lower conversion rate.
Yeah, that's a great strategy, and it sort of helps mitigate some of the risk of spending on those broad terms. But on the other side, you definitely don't want to ignore broad and phrase altogether, because that's really going to limit the number of impressions. So that's the third bullet
Mm-hmm.
point here, is that, at the beginning, maybe the objective of your campaign is to drive impressions and clicks, and it's not exclusively focused on sales at the onset. So to really maximize those impressions, you do want to mix in those broad and phrase rather than exclusively looking for those exact match types, because those are going to be the terms that are going to be matched with the most search terms that people are entering into Amazon. And just going back once, the last point here is one that's important. I know if you've been using sponsored products for a while, you know that Amazon does include things like common misspellings or the plural version of a term when you set up, say, an exact match of men's shoes. Men's shoe would also correspond to that. That's not the case here in headline search. So this is an opportunity for sellers to really get smart about what they're bidding on, and to not forego the opportunity for those common misspellings or those abbreviations or the plural or sort of synonyms. So make sure you're looking for the opportunities for those terms that may not everyone be searching for, but when they are, they're highly relevant. And I did want to pause here just to answer a few questions that are coming in. So as Andy mentioned when he was kicking things off, please do write in your questions through the GoToWebinar panel. So I see that Pamela just wrote in, is there a benefit to using the same keyword as a broad or an exact match? So for example, putting in post-workout supplement as an exact match keyword and then using it again as a broad. What do you think there, Liz?
Absolutely, yeah. We'll take that same keyword and we'll put it in all three match types. Because we'll get the exact match in the exact search term in the exact match. The phrase will spin off a couple different variations from that. Excuse me, and the broad will spin off even more variations from that keyword. One thing I should point out is, unlike sponsored product ads, there is no search term report currently for headline search ads, and so you are flying a little bit blind here in that we're not seeing exactly what search terms the broad matches are spinning off. And because often you'll go in with sponsored product ads, you'll go grab those search terms and kind of reinsert them into your campaign as exact or phrase or such. But we don't have the opportunity here. But yeah, to answer your question, we take that keyword and we exact it. We match it to all three match types.
And we just got a question from Dwan as well, saying, how important are the generic keywords on the back end on the back end of your listing as compared to what you're doing with the headline search ads? So for this one,
that is a really good question.
Yeah. Go ahead, Liz.
I haven't done extensive testing on this yet, so I don't have a great answer for headline search ads. We do know that they're important for sponsored product ads, and so my assumption is they're also important for headline search ads because Amazon does look for relevancy. It looks to, it has algorithms that try to understand what your product is, what it does, what your target audience is, and will match up the keywords you're using in advertising to what it believes your product is. So having those search terms in the back end can help with that relevancy part of the equation.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly how I would answer it as well. Is you want to make sure that anything that's very important to your product is built out into your product page listing, whether that be in your title, bullet point, description, or the generic back-end keywords. Because to Liz's point, it's not simply what you're bidding on the keyword; it's how relevant Amazon associates your product with that keyword as well. We also just got one question in from Adam of, should we add our singular and plural versions as well as common misspellings in the HSA search terms? And Adam, yes, absolutely. That's an opportunity to build out additional keywords to cover those additional single or plural common misspellings, because that's not going to automatically happen from Amazon. So let's go to keyword selection. So as Liz just referenced, there is a lack of reporting on the HSA side right now. So we don't have the benefit of that search term report to see what all of those strings of text were that were matched to the keywords that we're bidding on. But what you can do is leverage your sponsored products data. So this is where we see that it's very important to not just run one or the other, but run both ad types, and they can really help each other out. So if you're a seller that's taking advantage of the Teikametrics Sponsored Products Optimizer, you can navigate right to your Profitable Keywords tab and see what those most successful terms are, and make sure you're bidding on those on the HSA side as well. For those of you that are still doing things manually or using another piece of software, you want to pull that search term report from the sponsored product side, do some sorting and filtering there in Excel, and get that list of what works best for you, because that's going to be your best source of data in the absence of that true search term report on the headline search side of things. This table here on the right is something that's published on Amazon as part of their optimization guide. And I thought it was important to bring up, and Liz has been hitting on it through the webinar, is to make sure you have a strategy and an objective for each of the campaigns that you're launching. And you're not just grouping all of your products with all of your keywords under one singular campaign. Here you can see the keyword types here are broken down into different buckets. So you may want to launch a campaign that's all around your branded product keywords. So really heavy on your brand, targeting your brand name, your product name, or some variation thereof. You could also have a separate campaign that's set up around your competitor brand name to try to steal some sales away from people who are searching for your competitors and show up right there at the top of the search page. Obviously, the difficulty of trying to put all of this in one campaign is it makes it really hard to optimize, and you won't have a consistent message with that headline or that logo. So by breaking your campaigns out into these types of keywords, it really lets you tailor the approach and really be focused in on what you're trying to get out of that specific campaign.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so important to do testing. Not any one strategy is going to be the best strategy for your brand, or all brands for that matter, but doing that A/B testing, testing all these strategies against each other, figuring out what works best for you, and then focusing on that. And each product line may be different. You may have a really successful branding campaign for one product line. Maybe another product line does better with a cross-selling campaign. Selling against or advertising with complementary products. So test everything, watch the numbers, and go with what works for you and your brand.
Yeah, great advice. So we've got to now step 4, and this is the final step in the creation of the campaign. So we've created our list page, we've picked our image and our title, and we've selected the keywords that we want to bid on. Now in the final step, you're going to name your campaign, establish the duration and the budget. And as Andy had asked earlier, how long does this typically take? So right now we're seeing that turnaround in about 48 hours. So there's a couple notes here. One is, and I've seen a couple questions come in. One came in from Lauren just a couple minutes ago. Can you change the landing page that shows multiple ASINs after you create the HSA campaign? So unfortunately, no, there's not a lot you can edit after this has been approved by Amazon. So you want to make sure that as you're going through this creation process, you've got everything squared away and you're comfortable with all of the copy and the landing page that you've created. Because once you've submitted this, you can't edit your headline or images. You can edit your keywords and your bids on those keywords, but not the ad itself or where it's being directed. The other point here is on duration. So typically, we recommend not setting an end date. There's a couple reasons here. So one is, if you do have an end date and your campaign expires, there's no way to restart it. You have to sort of start from scratch and recreate it and then resubmit it to Amazon. So that could cost you a couple days in the meantime where you're not running advertisements. You don't want to run into that situation. How do you think about the end date there, Liz?
Yeah, same strategy. Veterans of AMS will tell you that you used to have to put in an end date in these ads in the AMS side, and it was a real pain in the neck. We would be setting reminders, and you could stretch it out, but it was a matter of like, I'd set it out to end of Q4 or something and set a reminder myself to go back and check it and push the end date further back. And so leaving that blank just at the get-go will give you that much more flexibility.
And Liz, to jump off of that, about how long do you let ads run before you go back and review them or start to make changes?
We'd like to give it at least 4 weeks. You know, you want time to kind of settle in, to bring in the impressions and have the sales follow it. And one difference is that there's a 14-day attribution window here, so it's a little bit longer than sponsored product ads. So you want to make sure it's running long enough so that the sales that are coming in a week, 10 days after the click is being attributed to your campaign. So about four weeks, you start to get an idea of what's going on. And during that time, you are still optimizing, you're adjusting bids, you're watching things carefully, your ACOS and your spend, and you know, compared to sales. But even at 4 weeks, you may not just want to kill it. You may want to give it a few more weeks to keep optimizing, keep adjusting bids if you realize something's not working. And you know, after 6 to 8 weeks, if it's just not working, because sometimes it doesn't, you may want to kill that campaign and try a different strategy.
Perfect. Thanks for that, Liz. That leads us right into our next poll question about how you're measuring the success of HSA. So Joe's going to launch the poll here.
Great. So the answers here are click-through rate, ACOS, impressions, revenue, or are you unsure and not measuring the success? And what we're really looking at here is, you know, are you trying to drive impressions and clicks? Are you looking just for some incremental profitable sales? What is your overall objective and how are you measuring that success?
So while people are responding in, Joe, what would you say is, you know, the difference between running an HSA ad and a sponsored product ads, and would you approach the objectives a little differently?
Yeah, I would. That's a great question. So we referenced it a little bit earlier in the webinar, but we see headline search as being more of the top of the funnel, letting people know that you're getting that brand awareness up, letting them know what you are, what you're selling, what your selection looks like on Amazon. And we see it not as directly resulting in sales as a sponsored product ad, which just falls in line with the rest of the search results. So typically the objective on the headline search is a bit broader and getting people aware of your brand, aware of your products and your selection so that they do come back at a later date and end up purchasing. So it looks like almost everyone. Go ahead.
Oh, yeah, I was going to add to that a little bit, Joe. Piggybacking on that, one thing that's kind of different, that's a subtle, not subtle, but it's a difference you may not notice or think about, I should say, is that impressions in headline search ads compared to sponsored product ads will be probably a little bit lower. If you think about the placement of sponsored product ads, there are, you know, gosh, at least 6, 7, 8 placements on a search results page where you could have a sponsored product ad, you know, three across the top, sidebar, bottom, on the product pages themselves. Whereas headline search ads, there's one, the real estate is much smaller. There's one slot. So competition will probably be higher for that one spot, and total impressions will just be a bit lower than sponsored product ads. This will not perform at the same level as sponsored product ads. We typically see, let me pull my number up here. We typically see ad revenue from headline search ads to be about 20 to 50% of your sponsored products ad revenue. So it's a smaller piece of the advertising pie, but an important one.
Yeah, that's a great point. That's an interesting number. So, you know, a lot of sellers will ask that question of, you know, where should I be breaking out my budget, and what should that breakdown look like? But we see similar metrics for our sellers as well, is that sponsored products is still a much larger piece of the pie. To Liz's point, there's just so many more placements all over Amazon, but that headline search just has that prominent location, so it's a bit more powerful in that impression, but there are fewer of them out there. So just to recap the poll numbers here that we got in, so most people are measuring the success of HSA through the revenue that it's driving, 40%. The next highest is 31% looking at that ACOS. It's interesting that click-through rate is only at 8% now. That is definitely one of the things that I'm looking at most frequently, because it is a lot more powerful here, where it's showing me how relevant my headline search as is to the actual search. Are we getting people to actually click and explore on those products? It's a metric that I don't typically spend a lot of time looking at on the sponsored product side, but here with HSA, it's something that we really use to help optimize, and we'll get into some testing strategies in a minute, but it really indicates how relevant and how clickable is my ad.
Yeah, it will speak to the images you put in the ad, the whether or not your messaging in your ad is matching up to your keywords. And if brand awareness is your strategy, then click-through rate is going to be a big metric.
Great. So now we've had the opportunity to go through the full process on Seller Central and how to get these ads set up and launched. Now let's talk a little bit about the ongoing optimization and what you should be doing each week, checking in and adjusting these campaigns. So you should always be running tests. I recommend not only in advertising, but with your product pages, with your pricing, try to capture as much data as you can on your business. There's just so much volume through Amazon that you can test something for a couple weeks and really get a significant amount of data to act on. So we're big proponents of data and metrics, and it's in our name. So we want to make sure that you, at any opportunity, you are running tests to really improve your performance. With HSA, so what can you be testing? So you can test the headline and the image. You can adjust around what that says, what that message is to your customers, what that image is, and really look at those metrics like click-through rate, like sales. Where are you seeing the biggest lift? You can also test the order and mix of your featured ASINs. So on the banner headline search ad itself, you have those 3 ASINs that you're showing. You can adjust the order of those, which ones you're including, and see if any of that will impact how many people click or end up purchasing. And you can also test what that landing page looks like. So you could try fewer products, you could try a different order. So there's really a lot more control here and a lot more variables that you can tweak and really try to hone in on those things that are driving the best performance. In looking at what Amazon recommends, you should be setting up those multiple campaigns, having them run simultaneously, and changing one variable at a time, right? So that's important. If you go through and create a completely different campaign and try to compare the results, it's going to be hard to really hone in on what actually is driving the better performance. The note here is you should at least be running for 2 weeks. I'm with Liz. I think 4 weeks is a more appropriate amount of time to be looking back at the performance, especially because of the lengthened window of sales attribution. And then go into the test. Go into the test. The last point on that last slide was just go into the test knowing what you're looking for like what are you going to actually decide is a winner. So have that winning criteria ahead of time. Don't try to set up a test and then come back and look and say, well, what was I actually testing here?
A couple questions. I'll paraphrase here, and I'd like to get the team's point of view, Liz, from you as well, right? A couple things. One, can you run headline search? Do you recommend running headline search by itself, or is it always in combination with sponsored products? I'm curious. I'm going to let that. So give me your thoughts on that. And I guess the secondary question that I'm seeing is, what's the split? So if you set up your ACoS and say, hey, you know what, I want to spend 10% of my budget, whatever that might be, are you doubling your marketing investment, or are you just splitting your marketing investment between headline search and sponsored products advertising?
Yeah, good question. So do you want to go ahead, Liz?
Go ahead, Joe.
Yeah, just on that last piece, I would say headline search, I view that as being incremental to your sponsored products budget. But as we talked about earlier, it hasn't yet reached the point where you're spending as much at the sponsored product side. So the figure Liz gave was it's been about 20 to 50% of the spend on the sponsored product side. So it's definitely a smaller piece of the budget, but I don't see that eating away at the sponsored product side. I see that being incremental to the spend there.
Liz, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, if you increase your total marketing budget, so if you're spending, just to pick a nice round number, if you're spending $100 on sponsored product ads, that's a low number, but $100 in sponsored product advertising, add an extra $20 and start spending on the headline search ads and see what those returns look like there. And if your returns are really good, it's a different landscape. And so you'll experience different returns on that investment depending on your strategies, your product market. things like that. And if you're seeing just an amazing return on this HSA spend, start increasing that budget, increase your total marketing dollars. If it's a really low return, just not as profitable for you as sponsored products, or just not meeting your goals that you would like to be met, then maybe you'll keep that at a lower total budget.
Okay.
So I would say start with a test. Test, take an extra 20% and just start testing and see what works for your business.
Yeah, thank you for that. I guess I'm gonna round out the question in that I think it's really interesting, the poll, because every seller, I shouldn't say every, but most sellers that we talk to, everyone's fixated on this ACoS fit, right? So I think the thing is, when you think about what is return, it sounds like the feedback, Joe, that you're giving, Liz, you're giving, Gar, you're giving, is when you're measuring really how effective, let's say, headline search might be, it might be click-through rather than just revenue and or ACoS. Yeah?
Correct.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Definitely. And that sort of segues into this sales attribution. So there are a couple other key differences between sponsored products and headline search, and we've referenced it briefly, but here the sales attribution window, the typical window on the sponsored product side is 7 days. So what does that mean? That means a week after someone has clicked a ad, if they purchase, that gets attributed back to that click. If they clicked a month ago and end up purchasing, that doesn't get attributed back. On the HSA side, they've doubled that attribution window. So rather than just 7 days, they're giving the buyer a full 2 weeks before they close that attribution window. So I could have clicked on a certain headline search ad at the beginning of September, and if I ended up purchasing 2 weeks later, that would be attributed back to that advertisement. And there's a few things here. Is this gets to the point of, you don't want to be judging your performance too quickly, right? It's going to be too early to say, oh, if I've spent $10 or $20 and I've only had it running for a few days, you don't want to turn that off yet. You want to let that run at least 2 weeks, preferably 4 weeks, before you're making a decision to dial up or down your budget. And just one piece too on the budgets is, once you get to a place where you're comfortable with the return, and your ACoS is at a place that you're okay with, you should never be letting that daily budget constrain your growth. So if you're running at a 10% ACoS and you're okay with anything under 20%, if you're hitting your daily budget, that just means you're capping your growth and you're not serving ads after a certain point in the day. So I would encourage you to, if you are okay with where you're at performance-wise, that you do get aggressive on those budgets and don't be hitting those each day. Just one piece back on the attribution too is, I guess maybe we covered it. Sorry. Yep. So now the ongoing maintenance. So we've talked about setting them up, getting your tests squared away. So what else can you do? So as we mentioned, you can't be adjusting your headlines or your images for a product campaign that's launched. You can create additional tests, but what you can do is adjust your bids. And this screen will look pretty familiar if you've used sponsored products, because it looks almost the same, but there is a new column called win rate, and that's something that's new to the Seller Central side. It is something that was available in AMS if you've used that in the past. And even with no search term data, you can still optimize your campaigns. So we don't have the ability to see what exactly search terms were mapped to a specific keyword, but I can see the performance of a keyword. One note here is that you do have the ability to add or subtract different columns. So in Seller Central, you'll see in this screenshot, it's lit up in orange, that columns button. So if you're not seeing all of the relevant columns with impressions, clicks, click-through rate, you can add those in. And what we'd recommend is, if there are areas where you're seeing sales come in, your ACoS is low or your click-through rate is high, dial those bids up and try to get more of a win rate there. So you'll see in this example, a lot of the 50 cent across the board, that's an okay place to start, but you want to start making adjustments. You can see that top line has resulted in almost $300 of sales, spending only less than $6. So that phrase looks like it's working well for me. So I want to try to get more out of that and get a larger win rate. So for that example, I would slide that win rate bar up and try to increase that bid. And Liz, how do you interpret the win rate that we see in the headline search ads?
I look at it as a recommendation and not necessarily hard data. Amazon does feed data into this, but you've got to decide for yourself what you're willing to bid. If you're selling your product retails for $10 and it's telling you that a 90% win rate is a $5 bid, unless you're planning on investing a ton of money in marketing with no return, that's not a great bid. And so you got to put it into context and look at it and see what Amazon may be telling you about the likelihood of your keyword showing, but put in a bid that's right for your strategy, right for your product, that isn't going to blow your budget before even getting a single sale, or even if you get that sale, it didn't even cover the cost of the advertising campaign. So, look at them as a place to start, but then make your own decision on what you think that bid should be based on the value of your product.
And Joe, would you mind just explaining for some of our sellers who haven't used headline search advertising before what win rate is and what's the best way to interpret that?
Sure. So that's giving you a range of how likely you are to show up on that headline search ad. So at the top of the search there where we showed you what it looks like. So in this example, for those ones at the top there where you have a 0 to 25% win rate, that means if 100 people entered that keyword in, you're going to show up 0 to 25% of the time. So as you dial that win rate up, your Amazon's going to suggest you bid higher, and then you'll be more likely to capture more of those placements.
Perfect.
Awesome. So thanks to everyone for joining. We do have a few questions that we'll go over. It looks like we have about 8 minutes till the top of the hour, so we'll answer a few questions, and then we also have a few links to leave everyone with, so we'll move over to those in a minute, and as well as be sharing those in the chat box here. We have had a few questions around whether this presentation will be available, and yes, that is something that we will be sending out the replay, so you'll be able to dial back in and listen to this broadcast again. That will be sent out sometime next week. Let me pull up some questions that we've just gotten in from customers. So one question that we got in from Lauren: should the keywords be the same with the same bid for test campaigns that I'm comparing? Wouldn't one win for the keyword since there's only one spot for HSA? So yeah, I think that's a good question. You do want to keep as many variables steady as possible, and sort of as we just described with win rate, it's not something where just because one bid is higher, you're going to get all of the volume. That's going to be spread across not only your own headline search ads, but all of those that the different sellers are competing on. So yeah, I would recommend when you are testing different headlines, different order of your images, different logos, that you do try to keep all those other variables as close as you can, because you want to try to be able to point the success to one of those variables. Question that just came in from Madeline Johnson: how do you come up with headlines for the ads? What type of wording has the best success? So there, I think you're going to really land on what works for you based on some testing. So I start off really simple. You only have 50 characters to work with, so this isn't something you should be overthinking. But I think as we talked about earlier, you want to make this as relevant to the customer search and to your products as possible, because if they're searching something and then they see that exact search or something very similar in that ad, they're highly likely to click and then check out your products. So I think you can refine that over time, but it's not something you should overthink. You should be as simple and straightforward as possible and make that a clickable headline.
Yeah, put yourself in the shoes of your target audience. Think about the search term that they are using to find your products, and of course, those are the same search terms you've got in your campaign. And build a headline ad that has a search term in it. And there's only 50 characters, so it's not like you're going to say a whole lot more, much more than those couple keywords that may be there. But use one of your keywords. Think about what the customer's searching for, because you want kind of your headline to kind of to closely match their search query.
Yeah, and then we'll take one final question here, and then we'll transition to a few links that we have for the audience. So we've got a lot of questions around if they're using HSA in AMS today, do you recommend that they also set up campaigns in Seller Central? How have you been handling that with your sellers, Liz?
We have honestly we've been making this decision with several clients. And we are leaning towards just picking one platform together. We don't see an advantage to using both. Obviously, there still are some key differences between AMS and Seller Central. One of them in AMS being that you can use a custom link or a brand page as your landing page. So if your focus is really branding, brand awareness, you may want to use the AMS side of things so that you can use those custom links as a landing page. One big drawback, as most AMS users know, however, is of course the reporting in AMS, where you only get one default view. It's lifetime. And if you've been running a campaign, I mean, we've had campaigns that have been very successful that have been running for months. And the more time you get, the longer you go, the less you know about what's been happening recently. We've had cases where the ACOS just looks fantastic. It looks, maybe a little high, maybe 30%. But we feel like it's still sustainable when we're looking at the lifetime data. But when we start downloading the reports and start comparing week over week, we're finding out the ACOS is actually closer to 60 or 70%. So, the short of it is reporting is very difficult in AMS. And so we have been strongly leaning towards moving to Seller Central simply because the reporting is so much easier there, because you can define the date range. You can look at shorter term versus, a longer term view on that data. And it just makes it easier to manage in Seller Central with that change in reporting.
Yeah, and if you aren't using the other features in AMS, I find it is helpful to have both sponsored products and headline search in the same place, just so that you can optimize those together and leverage the data that you're seeing from one in the other. So with that, I think we're going to
you could have it in one place.
Yeah, just over to a few different links here. And this first one we're excited about. So and I'm sharing these links in the chat box so that you can click in and explore. Here we're collecting all those who are interested in learning more about HSA. Right now, Amazon doesn't have the controls available via the API to actually make changes to your headline search ads through software, but that is something that we see coming down the road. So what we'll be doing with this launch list is gathering those sellers who are interested in learning more as we develop a piece of software that helps you manage here. And we'll be communicating with you, giving you tips along the way, as well as giving you the first access to the piece of software as we pull the HSA piece into our sponsored products optimizer. The next piece here is a link to getting a free 30-day trial. So if you're not yet a seller who's taking advantage of the sponsored products optimizer, would love to give you that free 30-day trial so you can check it out. I just shared that link as well. That's going to give you a preview of what our software can do on the sponsored product side. So we've been working over the past year to develop this platform, which not only is going to help you with keyword recommendations, but it also completely automates the bidding process. So you'll be providing the software with a target for your ACOS, and you can sort of put that on autopilot and let the software take over. So that's something we're really excited about, and will be helpful as you build out headline search ads, just because of the data that we're collecting on both bids and keywords that you can help filter in to your headline search side. We also have our next webinar that's coming up October 4th. We're really excited about this one. It's all about winning big in Q4. So, I mean, everyone's already gearing up for the holiday shopping season. So we'll be going through different strategies to really help prepare you for the season and execute, and what you should be looking for and measuring along the way. And we have one final link that I'm sharing with you through the chat, and that's the link to Liz's website, agility.co. And there you can learn more about what Liz is doing with her sellers if you're interested in getting a conversation with her and working with her on any optimizations. So I'd love to, just thank everyone for joining. We really enjoyed the conversation. Thanks to Liz for joining and providing those incredible insights.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys.